Welcome to week 2 of social psychology. I've opened up to the week 2 tab, and as you can see, the first thing here is the to-do list. So again, these are just instructions on kind of what we'll be working on this week. It's a guide that you can use to make sure that you're not forgetting anything and that you're getting in all the assignments, discussions, and all that stuff. So this is really just sort of a list as a suggestion. Doing it in this order is probably the best way to approach it, just because it makes the most sense. I kind of always want to read through the chapter first with your lecture slides along with it so that you can make note of content that overlaps, and then watch the video links. Now, just a reminder that the video links are embedded in the Revel reading of the online text. So when you're reading the e-text for the class, it will show you when there's a video link available that maps onto content that you're reading about. So just be sure that you're on the lookout for those. In addition, some weeks I will have extra videos that I'll have you watch. So usually those would be listed down below as you work through. But you want to be doing the reading first, and then you want to be watching the video links. You have a second article to read. So aside from reading chapter 1, you're also going to be reading article 2, which talks about the human use of human subjects. So really the article is all about ethics, excuse me, in research, and how to best go about conducting ethical research when you're using human participants. So we're going to be getting into informed consent and debriefing, deception, all of those sorts of elements. So you're going to be really reading the APA guidelines for conducting research, and that's what's in Article 2. Now, your book also talks about it as well. Towards the end of Chapter 1, you're going to see some of that content in there. So when you get to the discussion board link below, that's your topic for this week, is looking at this article and looking at the ethics discussion in the main text and sort of outlining and answering the questions I provide using those sources as your information. So right off the bat, you have objectives for chapter 1. So again, you're not answering these and turning them in. This is merely for you to have a guide as to what you should expect in the chapter. What should you be coming away with, knowledge-wise? So some of these questions or statements are going to be multifaceted. So you may have a number of things that you want to put under each one here. So I've always recommended to students that you could copy and paste these into a Word document and leave space in between each one. And that way, as you're reading through the material, you can go ahead and write in sort of your answer to each one. And that provides you with a nice study guide by the time you're done reading and something to go off of. So do keep that in mind. But pretty much in this chapter, you're getting introduced to the field of social psychology. What are its main components? Why does it exist as a sub-discipline in the field of psychology? What are some current trends in terms of the research? So looking at sort of the major contemporary research in the area. Looking also at the different stems of social behavior and the different lenses through which we can look at that behavior. So we'll be taking a look at some of the big approaches, sociocultural approach, evolutionary approach, just to name a couple. So you're going to want to really zone in on what each of those perspectives has to offer for understanding social behavior. So again, not one perspective is better than another. They're just different ways of viewing the same behavior, really. So the first half of the chapter is sort of dedicated to that, and then the second half is dedicated to research methodology in social psych. So here's where we get into the nitty-gritty of how do we go about conducting studies in the field. What types of research designs do we see used most in social psychology? So some of this may be a little bit of review if you've taken research methods, definitely. But even, after taking intro psych, you're going to have some understanding of this just going into it. So make sure to zone in on maybe the areas that you feel you need the most help with. Ones that are a little more complex, like the experimental design, and then correlations. What do each of them tell you? What kinds of questions can be answered by using each? And then at the very end of the chapter, you see how we get into ethics, specifically in social psychology, the use of deception. When we're looking at social behavior, it is often necessary that we include an element of deception so that the subject does not guess at what you're trying to get at. Otherwise, their behavior will not be their true behavior. That being said, we need to tread lightly in how we go about doing that and carefully. So that's where the content and the discussion of ethics comes into play. Like, what kinds of safeguards, so to speak, need to be put into place in order to conduct that kind of research. So that's just a brief overview of the chapter. And then we have the PDF of the first chapter. So I promised that to you. Some of you are still working on getting your books. I would say definitely have that solidified by the end of this week so that you don't fall behind on the readings. But here's the PDF of chapter 1 just to get you started. I do want to remind you that I have a copy of the textbook on reserve at the library. So you're welcome to check that out for a period of time and make copies and use it the best that you can, especially if you don't have your book yet. But even if you're looking for a way to save some money, that might be a good option. The article reading for this week, Article 2, is attached here. So all of those I will give you each week. I will give you the PDFs of the articles so that way you can be reading and doing that, and there's nothing you need to purchase there. Here are the lecture slides that go along with chapter 1. So again, the best use of these, as you're going to see when you print them out, is there's 3 slides per page with some room for notes. So best way to use those is print them out and keep them with you as you're reading through the chapter. You can jot down notes in the margins, and that way you can bridge concepts that are being talked about in the text and then concepts that are being talked about in the lecture slides. And so I think by the time you're finished with that, along with these objectives up here, you'll have a good framework for a study guide to use to study for the exam. Now, the rest of the podcast, I just want to explain to you how the discussions are going to work for this week. This is your first discussion. So how it generally works is after you've done all the readings and you've watched all the videos, you're going to go ahead and you're going to click into here. Okay, and that's going to open up the discussion board, and you're going to create a thread. And when you create your thread to the discussion, what you're doing is you're answering these questions here. Okay, so this week it's pretty easy, pretty straightforward. It involves the reading on ethics. So you're asked, which of the studies that you're going to read about involves the greatest ethical issues? Why? Why do the study that you read include things that are issues in terms of how we would go about doing ethical research? So some of you may pick different studies. You likely will, and that's great. The great thing about that is then when you are done answering this question and you have your response there, you're going to wait at least a day, let everyone answer in, and once all of those are in, then you can go ahead and look through people's responses, and you're going to select 3 people to respond to. Maybe you pick 3 people that chose studies that you didn't pick. that might be interesting because you might have something to say that you didn't talk about in your post. And then you're going to want to just respond to them. So you would click on their discussion thread and you would insert your own comments. Now, what I'm looking for in these posts is for you to be thorough and for you to be integrative. So you want to take as many opportunities as possible to highlight what you've read, show me that you're understanding concepts, help the conversation move along in new directions by adding content to people's posts. So you want to try to stay away from just commenting, oh, great post, you brought up some really good points, or things like that. You really want to try to investigate the posts a little bit more so. So did they miss anything? Is there anything you would have added? Is there different examples you would have used? Engaging in that way is going to make for better discussion, and it's also going to provide hooks for more dialogue. And so that's what I'm looking for there. But just to make sure that you are on track and you know what you're doing, you want to go ahead and take a look at this discussion board posting rubric. So I've kind of broken down for you guys what exactly I'm looking for in a post and how to go about doing that. You definitely want to be paying attention to the syllabus for times and due dates, making sure that you're getting your posts done on time. And if you need help in terms of citing your references as you're going, you can use the Cite as you write instructions that I've included here. So again, you're responding to this question here, which is kind of like a two-part question. And in your response, you're citing the textbook and you're citing the article as support for your ideas. And to cite, you want to make sure you're citing correctly in APA format, which you can find here. And then you're going on and you're responding to 3 other people's posts. And those should be all-inclusive. Okay, so we want to stay away from just a couple sentences. We want to make them a little more thorough. How can you add to what was said? And that might be that you add in some of the content from the book that you read about or the article that you read about. But pretty much that will help so that we have more content to the postings. So that actually wraps it up for this week. There's no tests or exams. It's simply just, I really want you guys getting used to the discussion postings and how that works. I give pretty good feedback. At the end of the week, I will grade your discussion posts. And when you go into your grades, you can click on your grade that you receive and you'll see my comments there about it. And you can also click on the actual threads of the discussion to see what comments I might have made to other people. This will all be super helpful as you're preparing next week for the week after. So you want to make sure you read the feedback from week 2 before you start that week 3 discussion. That way, if you did do something in error or you missed something, you're not making the same mistake. And if you did a great job, you know you're right on track. And I'll try to do my best to give you appropriate feedback if you're needing improvement that will help guide you in that way. So if we go back up to the top, that is all we have for this week, but please keep in mind office hours, of course, as well as you can pretty much email me anytime if you have questions as you're starting to really get through the meat of this chapter this week. Okay, have a great week, everyone. Thank you.